Welcome to This Old App, a podcast about learning, coding, smashing stuff together, breaking things apart, startups, failing, winning, and any other buzzwords we can think of.
All right, so normally I would come on and say, hey, Randy, I want to talk about something today, but I'm not going to say, hey, Randy, today. I'm going to say, hey, Megan. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Much better than Randy is.
Yeah, for sure. So Randy is fighting the flu at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're gonna press on without Randy and keep the schedule going. Megan's been on with us before, about 10 months ago,
Way back
talking
when.
about her journey as a developer and WordPress and CSS Grid, right?
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk a little bit more about how that's progressed and moved into JavaScript, which is there are days when I'm like, JavaScript was a nice progression from when I was learning PHP because they're both nice scripting languages, and there are days I'm like, why did I do this? So we'll talk a little bit about that. So Megan, fill us in a little bit about the journey. Last time we talked, you were doing some WordPress and some CSS Grid. How's that progressed so far? What have you been working on?
Well, I actually had completed a new website with WordPress for babeswithblades.org, a theater company I've been a part of that had like 20 plus years of past content and future content. So that turned out very well. It launched back in May of 2018, and I continue to support that. And I've built a few other websites for accessibility focused through WordPress, but that's been the main thing. Just now been trying to continue my journey into JavaScript and the absorption of all the different concepts and the languages for a newbie here. So
Sure. And being there in the household with Randy, I'm surprised he hasn't pushed Ruby and Rails on you yet, but I guess he's getting you started on JavaScript first.
I have no doubt it will come in time. Yeah.
So the JavaScript you're learning, I assume, and I could be assuming correctly, I'm assuming that's more the browser-based JavaScript and not so much of the Node, the server-side based JavaScript.
Correct.
It's everything within the browser. Okay.
Yeah, within the browser.
And has that been some work on jQuery or just plain JavaScript? What have you been digging into?
Right now, it's still been just plain JavaScript. I've kind of had a few things in between where I first started conceptualizing just JavaScript and how it worked, had to step aside, let the brain absorb it, came back to it a little bit more. Because I started off doing JavaScript through Udemy has a program called JavaScript: The Weird Parts,
Yep.
which has been great to get watch somebody teach each level and getting deeper and deeper. And then I needed to step aside from that and actually start the implementation, because you can watch it and you can sort of type along with it, but not actually do the implementation is what I needed for the reinforcement. So I jumped over to things like Codecademy, just to get an idea of reinforcing all the concepts. And that was very helpful to continue it. So
Sure. So Tony LSA's course, JavaScript: The Weird Parts is a great one. It's one of the ones I took up probably a couple years ago when I was just starting to dive into this world, and it's actually an odd one to pick up at the beginning because it's not a basics course. It does cover the basics, but it's not a basics course. But it's good. I don't know how it's tough to probably for you to gauge, but while it's not a basics course, it sounds like you're able to jump in and probably pick up on a lot of what was being discussed.
I think it really helped for the concepts of everything.
Sure.
I had to stop at a certain point where I'm like, you're going way too far, way too deep. I haven't reinforced in my own body and my own logic of implementing it. So I did have to step away from it for a little while and then was able to refresh with it. So it's really good conceptually speaking. And then also once you get a little bit more handle on it, to reinforce, oh, that's what he's saying. Oh, this is very, very, very helpful.
Right, for sure. No, and if I remember, and my memory's fading on that, but there's some good talk on closures in there, and some good videos on how to use this and how this is evaluated,
Mhm.
which are two of the big ones. It's always about how is this evaluated in JavaScript, and
Mhm.
lots of people have written lots of words about about that, and recorded many hours of videos about what this is, which is, I think, JavaScript's joke on the universe.
Well, yeah, and I've been sort of waiting a little bit for a different program that I really enjoyed, the Learn Enough to Be Dangerous courses. And I know
Mm,
they had finished the JavaScript, but I want the videos that go along with it. So I think that's in its beta TBD to be launched, to go along with it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that when it's ready.
right, and I'm typing very loudly in the background here on purpose because I was looking up to see if there's a specific book many years ago, and yeah, this was published back in March of 2014. So I don't even know if they have a new version. But back when I was learning stuff, there used to be, there still is, it appears, a series called Head First, whether it was
Hmm.
Head First JavaScript or Head First Java or Head First Python, things like that. And it was a great series, really one of those that I felt um, took everything kind of lightly,
Hmm.
wasn't so serious about everything. So that was a great series of books, but it's been so long since I've actually used a book to power through a new language that, yeah, it looks like that this was, they may have stopped updating it here back 2014. So
Hmm.
it was interesting. So anyway, what as you've been going down this trail, anything pop out at you as far it's interesting because you're not coming in with other languages in your back pocket. Yes, you've got
Not at all.
HTML, yes, you've got CSS, but and those are, I guess, languages, but they're not scripted languages, not
Hmm.
compiled languages. They are more, I don't even know what
Markup.
the right
Yeah.
term is, because HTML stands for markup language. The ML stands for
Hmm.
markup language, but it's not programmatical, I guess, is the best way to put it. So this JavaScript's really your first exposure.
Yeah.
So what are a couple things that have popped out at
In terms of, like, struggles or things that I've
you? Sure,
actually
let's talk about struggles.
well, it's funny, I was reflecting back to the first time I actually was exposed to it. I actually had attended one of Randy's courses, teaching courses, and they were using the dot method, and I had no idea.
Hmm.
I started implementing it in the class with the other students alone, just observing, but and I made some things work, but I didn't fully understand how, and then we got to a certain point and was like, I don't understand. At that point, I didn't even understand operators. I didn't understand key value terms. And it was
Sure.
more just like, I saw a pattern and now let's try and repeat it. And then once we went past a certain point, I was like, I'm lost. I'm so
Yeah.
lost. My
Yeah.
brain's about to explode. Um, so I think getting to understand different levels of just key variables, key value pairs, and the objects and how things can be within each other, and how I think the current thing that's always the trickiest, as I'm using things like Code Academy, they're telling you about, you can use functions within a function and whether you use the fat arrows. It's more just figuring out what is the right code syntax for writing out those sort of functions. Like, I was chatting with Randy and looking at what was online. I was like, "There's so many different ways to write this. What is the best way? What is the best?" And he's like, "Whatever your team decides," sort of a thing. I'm like,
That
"Well, that's."
sounds like a Randy answer, by the way, which you
He's
know.
like, "Uh-huh." He's like, "Well, I use the fat arrow and other people will have big problems with it, but it's really just a matter of what the team decides." I didn't know if that was a universal thing. I don't know for you in terms of, have you worked with many other people as well to know what is the best approach to being consistent in the beginning, so that when I know, like, I'm writing something three different ways and I'm not sure, I keep getting confused as to whether I'm doing it correctly or have to reaffirm, go back to the simpler method, go back to being more explicit with. um, like arguments and parameters and whether they're
Yeah.
implied.
Yeah. No, I have not worked on JavaScript with a team. The closest team I've had is working on a couple different things with Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And usually we were working different sections of the code. So we really didn't settle on a standard too much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a right answer. I mean, there are subtle differences between an arrow function and a properly constructed function, mainly around how it handles the this keyword.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the end of the day, if I'll put it this way, I don't think you're at this moment. I don't think you're on a path to go join a team.
Mm-mm.
You're on a path of let's continue freelance and let's continue learning it this way. So I'd say what makes sense to you works,
Mm-hmm.
and just go forward with it. The it's interesting because the concepts you're having to take things like arrays and just
Mm-hmm.
start from new, whereas I can come into JavaScript and go, okay, that's an array, that's an associative array, and the concept is immediate. I know what it is, and I know how to use it. It's just a matter of syntax at that point, where you're coming in with, I don't even know what that is.
Right.
And we haven't even gotten into object oriented programming or anything like that. Foundational theories. So I guess that may be the next direction to head, is outside of learning how to implement an idea or a small project in JavaScript. Have you done any digging into um, concepts in programming, in computer science, like object oriented or other concepts like that?
No, not at the moment. And like what you said before about just looking at the screen and just recognizing immediately what, like, oh, that's a function within a function. That's an array with a
Right.
that is what I'm at that point just now starting to get more familiar with and picking that up a little bit more quickly. But that's definitely where I'm at, where I'm building more things from scratch as opposed to going into a bunch of code base and figuring out the problems, and how to refine it so it's a little bit more clean or to
Sure.
fix any bugs. So I definitely have not even reached that level. I get the concepts of everything, but yeah, getting just my eyes familiar with the page and what is working there is where I'm at.
Well, that's a heck of a journey for sure. I can't even really fathom what you're trying to achieve. To some degree, I can, because I've literally got VS Code open and I'm doing some work with Puppeteer, which is um, a headless browser. So that even in and of itself is a hard thing to define. But it's essentially you're able to um, work within JavaScript as if you were doing stuff in a browser. So this is a
Hmm.
case of, I want to go out and I don't want to generate stuff on a page. I want to go read something off a URL. So I don't need to do anything on a page, but I need to operate like things are on a page. So I need to operate with selectors and pulling this particular table row out of a page that's at a URL somewhere.
Mm.
And really, a lot of what I'm doing is looking for tutorials, looking for examples, saying, okay, that example's kind of close to what I want to do. Let me pull that in to my code. Let me modify it to fit what I'm doing. And I'll be quite honest, let me run it and see what happens.
Mhm.
That's literally where I'm sitting right now. Is I've got a bunch of error messages down in the bottom of my in my terminal here, um, because I took a piece of code and I said, I'm just going to slap it in there, do the best I can to try and make it work, and then run it, and then chase down the error messages. So I have a feeling the process is maybe similar with what you're doing. And I'm not advocating this as the best process, by the way, but it's probably similar to what you're doing right this minute.
Yeah, it sounds like the difference between taking a big chunk of code and throwing it in there and slapping it, and you have more of a problem where you have multiple bugs versus as you're typing along, you can test it along the way to see if it's not breaking and working. So it's just a more compounded level of debugging, it sounds like.
Yeah, and again, the other idea is I can conceptualize what each chunk's trying to do, and I
Hmm.
say that, and there are some chunks I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm going to try running you, see what happens. Um,
Hmm.
and it for me, it's a case of what I try and do. This particular project, I'm trying to read things off a particular URL. So I'll go and I'll read this particular table row off the page, and I'll process it and I'll put it in an object. Um, and then once that runs, I go on deeper in the page and I try and do other things. And I'm working my way through all the different pieces I want instead of writing it all in one shot, and
Mm.
trying to get it all working perfectly. So the particular one I'm hung up on right now is I need to take a page, um, and this page has a number of links to other pages on it. And what I want this
Hmm.
program to do is go to each of those links and pull off something off that page that it refers to. So I'm having to loop through each of those links. And the problem I'm having is that the looping language I'm using, which is a for each function on an
Hmm.
array, which I don't know if you've gotten to or not.
That I have gotten
Yeah,
to,
so
yeah.
so for each on an array, um, fairly straightforward. For eaches are fairly straightforward. Go through this array and hit do this to each portion of the array. For some reason, it's not working with the puppeteer language, the puppeteer code that I
Hmm.
as I expect. So I've got some work to do here. But that's the struggles I'm working with, and that's how I work through them. Um, what are you heading towards? What not big picture, but small picture. What's the next thing you're looking to knock down?
I think it's more, there's a lot of test games and things out there to start actually building like the typical hangman, tic tac toe, just starting from scratch on that. I am in the long run, I'm actually working with my dad. We're both sort of training together under Randy's tutelage and self tutelage to try and build. I don't know if Randy's talked about this or not. I haven't listened to recently. A directory. Like we moved somewhere and we're like, well, let's start a concept of like a contact directory for where we live
Sure.
for the neighborhood. So we're working on the HTML and the CSS, and I'm using CS Grid right now. But the next thing will be the implementation of JavaScript and create a resident page, create a home page, link them together. So that's sort of my current project that I'll be hashing out
Hmm.
while I'm also working on the typical tests and the hangmans and then the training tutelage that's conceptual based. Or I haven't actually thought beyond that because until I get those couple things down, it's sort of like, well, one thing at a time. Let's not bite off too much
Sure.
um, before I get there. But
So let's
Randy and I will
go
we
ahead.
talk about a lot of the things. No, it's just we usually will talk about when and why you use sort of like Node.js and but more just an idea of what is the path. So
Sure, sure. No,
or
and
what's
that's
next.
that's where I was headed is, you're very much headed in a direction of fully immersing in JavaScript as even a CRUD, um,
Hmm.
CRUD functions, and
Exactly.
and and I, it sounds from your reaction like you even know what CRUD means. So
Yep.
and that's going to pull you into Express and probably React eventually, and that whole path. And the Node part of it is the other side, the server side, and that's where Express
Mm.
comes in. Express is written in Node, and it handles the back end. Um, and I find the back end stuff easier because something I was never good at was the CSS HTML part of it. I was
Hmm.
always able to throw HTML out on the page and get it roughly to be what I wanted to look like. But I would say you're further along on CSS than I am. Just I've dabbled in grid, but I just it's not something I've ever really wanted to dig into, and that's why I kind of stuck to the node and working on the Alexa skills, because you don't need a ton of display in on Alexa skills, although they now have a part of that where they can display on a phone or TV or the Echo Show, things like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've always stayed away for the most part lately from anything displaying. Although
Hmm.
for some of the ones, and this is something Randy and I have talked about, for some of the stuff I'm doing for my company, I'm going to have to do some display. So I'm looking for some very um, vanilla templates to use. I don't need a lot of color for what I'm doing. Nothing that I'm doing is for show, is for making it look attractive to where people want to buy it. It's more so that people just use it to
Hmm.
simple CRUD operations like you're talking about. I need you to update this work order. I need you to give me, a few sentences on what this work order is doing. Things like that.
Yeah,
For that, I don't need
yeah,
a
you
lot
just
of
need to
colors. I need just need it in
no, you just need it
place.
to function. And for people to read it appropriately so they know what's on the page
Right,
and where.
right. So let's
Yeah.
talk, if you don't mind. Let's switch topics just a little, and talk a little bit about accessibility, because I know that's something you and Randy are very interested in, and have worked with various groups on. So, what have you found along the ways as far as accessibility, and anything you wanted to talk about there?
Well, having used a couple WordPress sites, I've been using multiple plugins that they have, and trying to also reinforce just the typical. There's a plugin, I'm trying to think of what the word is, where basically you can go through and look at if any of your images don't have alt tags. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's color contrast issues on the page. Those two basic things are really, really just basic fundamentals that I'm just like should be innate on most
For
websites
sure.
or applications, or turning off the color contrast and just to a grayscale. Because oftentimes people just can't. They need to be larger, can't view it. If they can't read it, that's a problem. If the color contrast doesn't show enough of a difference, it's all again hard to read. And then if you don't have just basic layout of your page with the landmarks like the header one and the nav and the labels and the links, if someone blind or hard of reading or hard of sight can't tab through it, they're not going to navigate through your page. So it's really just those concepts alone, color contrast, alt tags, so that if images aren't there or if they are there and they can't see them, it's described to them, and just so they can best navigate a page so they're not missing out on so much of the world out there in technology. So that's just reaffirming the basics is the main thing right now.
Yeah, and I know I was listening to the Syntax podcast, and they did an episode on accessibility, and I know the site you're referencing, or the tool you're referencing, where it gives you a, I don't know if it gives you a grade, but it certainly tells you all the places to go to fix it. And I can't, and I'm blanking on it as well as far as what that is. But maybe Randy in his infinite sick time can look that up and put it in the show notes for us.
Yeah, I can also grab some. They're just not right in front of me, so I
Yeah,
can share which WordPress. There's two plugins that I've used, and then there's a few different color contrast checkers that are either within WordPress or outside if you're not using that sort of a tool.
right, right.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure you get those.
So I that yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. So in general, what is your long term plan here? Is it to go ahead and become a developer and be able to go out into the world and work on different people's websites and provide functionality for people who need it?
Basically, that's where I'm at right now. I'm focusing more on front end at the moment with JavaScript and with the openness for a full stack ability. But everything's so new. I have no idea what will be my forte, or, of what I'm able to do more innately, where the demand is. I'm kind of like an open book. It's almost harder when you don't have a specific spot that you're like, this is what I want,
Sure.
to be able to go out there and focus on it. So really, I'm just starting from the front end and then working my way into demand that's what's out there. I don't know. It's a whole new field, and it's tricky to navigate. It's also tricky to figure out where you fit in so you can grow and learn with another team. Like I'm
Right.
trying to apply for junior dev or apprenticeships right now, and there seems to already be so much that you need to have under your in your tool belt before you even get assistance in that. So trying to figure out the best way to just grow and learn and feel like I'm contributing.
Have you? So there's two, and I think we've talked to people from both of these. In fact, I think it's the same married couple. Now that I think about it, have you looked at Moms Can Code or Free Code Camp yet?
No.
Okay, so
No.
both of those. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead and finish that, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you what I have to say.
So Moms Can Code, even though you're not a mom, they don't discriminate. It is a welcoming group of those who are trying to learn, or those that already know and are trying to expound. They have virtual co-working sessions. They have mentors and various things like that. So that's one place I'd recommend taking a look at. We had Beth Weigel on with us a little while back, and she is continuing her journey using that. And then her husband was doing some live code sharing sessions on Free Code Camp. And Free Code Camp is just a large, in-depth website with all sorts of programs and full curriculums that can take you down the path as well. So that, not that you need more things to go learn from, but those might be two places to find maybe even a sense of community.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And sort of what I was tying into what you're contributing is, here locally, I went up to a few meetups. There's a group called Women in Technology that I've met a handful of times, and they do a few classes, coding and cocktails for just women. I actually be going to my first one this Saturday for
nice.
HTML, and they're like, no requirements, just need to have the computer. You don't have to have any background. We're teaching women from the ground up. And then each month they do a different course that gets you deeper and deeper into it. But they also do some mentoring programs called Coding and Cupcakes. So you can bring either a daughter or a niece or a young girl to teach little kids how to code.
Oh, nice.
And then in addition, they have something called Coding Dojo.
Sure.
I think that's what it's called. So that boys, men, women, all ages can work together and become ninjas. So that's exactly what I'm looking for, is a community, people that I can work with, grow with, and mentor, because I know you learn a lot faster as well when you try and teach someone else for the pairing process. So
yeah,
I'll have to look at those other two.
Yeah, I'm really a big proponent right now of Moms Can Code, because I've been following Beth's journey over the past year, and she's gone a long way, and I hear about a lot of how it's not just her, it's her being able to interact with different members of that community to get her further along. So I'm going to say that's a great place to look as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, sure. So I think we're at the end of time for today. I want to say thank you for stepping into Randy's shoes and helping us keep on schedule here. And providing your input on your thoughts as a new developer, as somebody learning down that track. So thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening to This Old App. Show notes and previous episodes can be found on our website at www.thisoldapp.online. Reviews on Apple iTunes are always appreciated and help promote the show. For questions, comments, or things you would like to hear on future shows, please email us at hello@thisoldapp.online. Show music is Guns Blazing by Fab Claxton, licensed by Pond 5. Voiceover work by MeganVoices.com. You'll hear from us soon.